Welcome to my podcast, Living by the Mantras, based on my book, Living by the Mantras, Common Sense Wisdom for an Extraordinary Life, which can be found anywhere you can buy books and at livingbythemantras.com. I am your host, Colleen Souza, and if you have been following our podcast, I typically have a co-host with me, but today you're with me all by my lonesome, and that's okay. I encourage you to hang out and hang out with me today as we take a look at mantra number 6 from my book. Plan B is just a distraction. And that's all about focus. Now, if you are tuning in for the first time, I just want to very briefly help you understand that the book Living by the Mantras is about 21, well, the book has 21 mantras, 21 sayings that were truisms, that were quotes, they were their phrases, their verses, their ideas that tied to common sense in our household, raising our children, in my business, as I have trained employees in years I spent as a classroom teacher, teaching students. I kind of live by what I call mantras, and they're just repetitive phrases that tie to a value that helps us remember that value. And in this particular episode, we're going to be dealing with the idea of focus, the idea of lack of distraction. And in our household and in my classroom and in our business, the idea that plan B is just a distraction is all about just that. And this episode is called the power of time blocking. And it sort of works out. If you tune in regularly, I typically have my best friend and husband of almost heading into 37 years sitting beside me, and we have a conversation. I've had some different guests, some of my children, if you will, hang out with me, some of them are their friends that have become like my children. But today I'm here hanging out with you by myself to talk about something that really is very significant to me. Now, if you are tuning in and you're seeing, okay, the power of time blocking, what is that? I'm going to tell you that there are a couple of types of people in the world. Well, there's lots of types of people in the world, but when it comes to time management, I think there are those who have the natural gift to be a good time manager and those who simply do not. And you are looking at, or if you are not watching me on YouTube and you are listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, you are listening to one who does not naturally have the gift of good time management. And that doesn't mean you need to tune out if you're someone who does, because maybe you live with or know well or work with people or a person who does not have quality time management. So maybe you can pick up some good tidbits, or even as a person who has natural skills in time management, you can always learn, you can always grow. So I really encourage you to hang out with me as we walk through this process today. And for those of you who are listening who think you fall under that category of not having such good time management, you're not alone. And hopefully some of the ideas that I share with you today will help you, because to review this series, time is elusive. Time, I mean, once it's gone, we can't get it back. There's a lot of things you can get back. You can get a lost item back. You can lose money and earn money back. But what you can't get is time back. Time is elusive. Time comes and then it's gone. And we can either squander it or maximize it. Now I'm gonna make sure I clarify here. When I say squander it, it doesn't mean you can't use it to have a good time. It doesn't mean you can't use it to relax. It doesn't mean that you can't use it to waste it at times, which means to just chill out and just be with people and not be effective. But what it does mean is that and I think anyone listening probably has at one time or another, even if you are a great time manager, had those moments where you're like, I cannot believe I've been sitting here doing this for a half an hour or an hour or whatever it is. And that something might be shopping online or playing a game, or sometimes it's just staring into nothing. But the idea that we suddenly come to our consciousness that we've lost a half an hour, we've lost a day, we've lost, whatever it is, because we just sort of floated through. And that's where my conversation is focused on today, because I naturally have to work. I naturally will squander time. I should say it that way. I am married to a guy who is naturally an amazing time manager. And so I experienced early on in our relationship, the difference between that. I wasn't taught a lot of, I was loved. I always want to make sure that I express how much love I felt growing up and how much wonderful things that I learned as far as values from my parents, but time management just really wasn't one of them. And as I became an adult, I discovered very quickly that I didn't have some of the skill sets that I needed to manage my time well. And I would find myself running into deadlines for schoolwork or work. Balancing a checkbook is time management, and I wasn't good at that because I wasn't taught the skills to be prepared to how do I handle all these new adult responsibilities that come along, and all of a sudden I was, at the end of whatever the time was, and I just wasn't prepared. And so how do we make the most of the time that we have? And how do we make sure, because I want to use a visual. Time is kind of like have you ever picked up sand on a beach? And most of the time it comes pouring through your fingers or over the edge of your hand. Same idea of trying to scoop water in your hand. For a little bit, you can have a little bit of a grasp, but it begins to drip between your fingers and overflow. And time is just like that. So how do we make sure that we use it the best? And I have discovered that time blocking is super important. Time blocking is telling my time where to go so that it doesn't go away without me. If you were to talk with us about, my husband and I, my family, about finances, we do the same thing with money. Though you can get that back, we always say, tell your money where to go, or your money's going to go somewhere, right? And so you have to be very specific in a budget, like how you budget your money. Otherwise, you're going to end up going, oh, shoot, I thought I had $100 more. I thought I had $1,000 more. It's the same with time. You have to tell it where to go. You have to create routines. And when I call it time blocking, it's clumping your day out. But time clumping sounds so lousy, right? So, or time chunking, there's another one. It's chunking out your day and understanding which parts of it, certain things need to be done. And I call it blocking. And so basically what I do is I take my day and I break it into pieces, and I decide what things are on a routine basis that I need to do. Now, if you are a working professional who shows up to a job and you have a lot of independence in trying to decide how you play out your day, like you're a manager in an office and certain things have to be done during a day, like you've got a list, okay? You've got a list. You could be a store manager, not in an office, but you've got a list of things you need to do. That would include dealing with clients, interacting with employees, getting certain paperwork done, sending out certain emails. All of these are things we have to do, correct? When I was a classroom teacher, I had to, it's probably why this became a method that worked for me, but we had periods in the school day, and I had chunks of those periods that I had to teach. I taught a subject called academic block, and it was English and history. I had to get my English lessons done and my history lessons done. And within those, there was sections where I would lecture. There were sections where the kids would work independently. And within English, there was the grammar, and then there would be some literature. So there were so many pieces, and you had to chunk the time out so that you would effectively use it. Or even in that situation, the bell would ring and you wouldn't be done. So you had to organize your time in chunks. That's basically what time blocking is. One of the biggest moments, epiphanies about the importance of that for me personally came when I left the teaching world. Okay, so I was a student. I kind of lived in that academic warrior. Time was chunked out by class period or whatever. Then I went into my adult life, and I did have some other jobs for a while, but very quickly I went back to education. And so my day was naturally broken up into blocks for me. But then suddenly, when I came to work for our real estate company, I had all the freaking freedom in the world to choose how I spent my day. And I will tell you why people in sales, whether it's real estate or other things where they have a lot of independence in how they spend that time, I can tell you why they're not always as successful. And that is that the time will just be gone if you don't tell it where to go. And so it became very evident to me, I would have to take a look at what I needed to accomplish during the day and then block out when I was going to do those things. Pretty basic. Hopefully at this point you're beginning to get a grip. But it's important to understand that we create routines, and when we create routines and our neural pathways pick up on those routines, okay, there's a whole piece that makes that effective, because our brain needs patterns, because there's so much stimulus coming at us all the time. Like when you wake up in the morning, for example, your brain knows to get up, okay, walk, whatever your pattern is that you typically do. Get up, you go to the bathroom, you wash your face, you brush your teeth, you make your way to the kitchen, you start your coffee and you start your breakfast, or whatever that routine is. It's pretty typical for most people, right? And so your brain just, you don't even have to think it, you don't have to say, start coffee now. Your brain just moves into that process with you, because you have created patterns for it. It's very, very useful to have your brain working with you on a daily basis and giving it a pattern and creating new neural pathways by blocking out your day and having specific structures involved. It's super important, because there are things we like to do and there's things we don't like to do. There's things that we want to do and things we don't want to do. And by creating time blocking, because what is our natural default? It's going to be to follow the things we like to do, things that are comfortable, things that are easy, okay? But there's a handful of things that are more challenging, that push us, that we have to do, even though we don't like to do them, get the tough stuff out of the way first, kind of an idea. And that's why it's super important to time block also, because not only are we creating these patterns for our brain, but we're also creating discipline for ourselves. And together, they really make a difference, okay? So how do you break down your day? There's so many different ways. You could create a spreadsheet. You could take a piece of paper if you don't want to use a computer and just break it down. But one of the ways I do, and I know that a lot of people are listening, but if you happen to be watching, and if you occasionally want to watch it, go out to the YouTube channel, Living by the Mantras. But I like pretty. So if you happen to be looking at what I'm holding up right now, it's a pretty cute version with all kinds of little notes. But the most important piece is that I took the day from about the time I get up until the time I go to bed, and I broke it into hour blocks. And then what I did was fill in those blocks with what I anticipate or expect myself to do. And this is based on my current situation. In fact, in putting this podcast together, I revised my time blocking daily doings, I call it, yesterday. And so it caused me to go, okay, where am I now? And that's another important thing. Depending upon what you do, you might have a very regimented, regulated type of schedule. And once you create a good time block of your day, it won't change very often. I'm in transition right now. I'm transitioning from being a full-time real estate agent to being a podcaster, author, still working with our real estate company. And so as my ongoing life as a podcaster and author kind of tweak and change, I'm having to make some changes in my time block. But that makes it all the more important, because when change comes our way, it's really easy to default once again to what's easy, not to be organized, to get overwhelmed, and then just say, hey, playing Angry Birds on my phone is far easier than dealing with all that I have to deal with. And then we lose a half an hour to an hour of our life. And I share that because that's something I do. I will sit there in the morning if I am not being disciplined, and I will play a couple of my favorite games on my phone. And I'll say, oh, I'm just doing this while I'm having my coffee and waking up. And then an hour and a half later, because I wake up very early, I'll suddenly go, holy cow, look at the things I didn't accomplish that I should have done in my morning time. And now I'm getting busy with my other things. So it's just super important that we do that. On top of blocking out time, what's super, super important is to create a distraction-free environment. So some of those of us who are listening to this who have a harder time naturally organizing our time and ourselves, part of it has to do with not breaking down our day and organizing it. The other part of it has to do with not creating a place, a location where we can get focused. Now, once again, when I was a classroom teacher for 20 years, I knew where my places were. My places were sitting at my desk, okay? For some of my stuff, it was being up in front of my students. And then when I got home at night after my kids went to bed, that was another time block I gave myself, because I blocked out time for family. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But I had the time where I would grade papers for a certain amount of time. And there was a little place I would sit at my house and work. And that's where my little basket of stuff I brought home from school that I knew that I had to take care of before I went to bed that night would sit. And then I would sit next to it and I would pull those out and sit and work. Those were locations that helped me be effective. I knew what to do when I got to those spots. If you are a independent working from home type person, if you get to have those home hours, it is of utmost importance that you create locations to do that. If you are trying to achieve something outside of, some of us have a second gig going. Okay, when I'm at work, it's easy to know, but when I get home and I'm trying to do this other thing, for me, it was to write a book. I needed to figure out where that location was. If you are in an office, and I know lots of them are like this now, they're wide open and you can have these free working spaces. Decide which space works for you, and that is where you do certain jobs. That location is critical. And I'm going to share my own story very quickly. When I started writing my book, we run a real estate company. Our real estate company, we run out of our house for the most part. So we're either in the homes with clients or we are in our home office. And for years, the home office, I had my space where I worked. But when I wanted to start writing Living by the Mantras, and I wanted to start focusing on that, even if I would block out time during the workday or even into the evenings, sitting in my real estate desk just wasn't working for me, because when I sat there, I was a certain person. I had a certain mindset and there was a certain focus that I had, not to mention that as I was spreading out papers and doing research and putting all of my ideas together, I would have to clean them all up so that the next morning I could be ready to use that for my real estate work. So I had to create another spot. And for a long time, it was literally, because the room I sit in now, we were building this little building off of our property, but at the time, I just literally took a corner of our large kitchen, our dining table. And we happen to have this really big table, and it was just my husband, my daughter, and I, and occasionally one of her friends. We could sit at one end of the table, and at the other end, I had a little box, little cart with all of my materials. And that, when I sat there, in my mind, that's where I wrote. That's where I organized. And if I had to, I could leave my papers out because no one was going to bother that end of the table. It served a second purpose because it became known to my daughter and to my husband, and my mom lived with us at the time. If I'm sitting there, I'm working on my writing. And it became a physical visual that mom needs to be left alone right now because this is what she's doing. That's super important when you're trying to create anything, when you're trying to have a workspace, whether you work from home or you work in an office. Maybe you work in an office where people can walk by and talk to you. You need to have a place where people know that's where you're working. And if you work in a place where there's lots of folks around, the other thing, and I would occasionally do this, I actually got to this point too, you can put on a hat, you can have a scarf, you can have some glass, like a cup, a big bright mug I'd set on the table. That's what I would do. And when they saw that mug out, that meant don't even talk to me. Don't disturb me during this time. One of the mentors and coaches that I followed about time blocking will put on a hat, and a particular hat. And when anybody walked by his office door in his larger office and they saw that hat on his head, they knew not to bother him. Not only had he blocked out the time, not only had he had a location where he was known to work and to be left alone, hat on his head said, particularly right now, do not disturb. And that's super important in honoring the time block, because you can write it down on paper and then get very distracted inside of it. So you have to create cues, and our brains will work with that. Where I currently sit and do my podcast, once this particular room was finished and I could, our purpose for it was to give me a place to podcast, to write, to be not distracted. I literally told my brain every time I walked in here, do not walk in that room unless you intend to work. And this becomes, my brain does something when I walk into this space. It says, this is work time, okay? This is a time to be focused. And if I don't want to be focused, I don't hang out in here. I leave this room. And so there's lots of ways to do that. You are giving your body and your brain routines, and then you're creating physical spaces that help remind your body and your brain that you have something to do while you're here. Those two things are super important to folks who struggle with time management and accomplishing what they want to do. And for those of you that are out there, you have strengths in other areas, by the way. And so you got to forgive yourself and not beat yourself up. Being married to an extraordinarily organized, naturally time managed, he's a global spectrum thinker, and he sees where things need to be done. And if he never made a list, which by the way, he does and keeps with him every day and always has, he would still seem to get it all done and keep it together. And I used to just feel less because I couldn't do that. But I'm a very creative spirit. I have energy. I interact with people. I'm best when I'm doing those things. He struggles with those. And so what I began to realize over time is this is just an area that I have to work harder at. It doesn't mean that I don't have gifts and strengths in other areas. I am not innately or naturally organized, but I have so much more to give the world that when I force myself to be a little more organized, I get to get more of those things done. So I want to throw that out there if you're thinking, this is so hard for me. You have to budget your time carefully. And I'm going to share a story. Just this last week, my husband Brian and I, in our real estate world, were back in Detroit, Michigan, and we were at United Wholesale Mortgage, is the nation's largest independent wholesale brokerage. And they had a seminar that we attended as real estate agents. And Matt Ishbia, who is the CEO of United Wholesale Mortgage, his dad started the business, he took it over. He's a billionaire. The guy runs this United Wholesale Mortgage took over the old Ford plant. This just the physical footprint of this organization is phenomenally impressive, and all the way that this works. And we got to take a tour and learn a little bit about it. But then Matt also owns the Phoenix Suns, and that's a professional NBA team, and that's just a lot to have on your plate and to do well. He got up and he spoke to the whole group, and I just smiled because I knew I was heading into doing this webinar or this podcast as I sat in his seminar. I can't put all my words together. And he said he talked about how he accomplishes what he does. And here are some of the things that he said. And I'm just going to share some of his quotes. Discipline is everything. Block out time and do the same thing every day. And I slugged my husband and I go, hey, that's what I do. That's what I do. And then he said, block out your day and don't react through your day. And that's a huge, huge thing. It's kind of like, and I'm going to throw this out there, when people go, oh my God, I can't believe Christmas is here. Well, it comes every December, right? Oh, I can't believe this is here. It's something you knew was coming along. That reactiveness that we have when we all of a sudden don't realize where time is gone. I love that block out your day, don't react to your day, because it means if you made your plans, you're going to be okay, and nothing is going to shock you when it comes along because you've organized yourself. He said, no multitasking. Well, if you've been following us, that was our last episode. Be all in on what you're doing. And he talked about the fact that if he has somebody he's got to talk with, and if he says you got 10 minutes, he is all in that 10 minutes. He doesn't pick up his phone. He doesn't get distracted, try to answer a text message, do something else. He's all in. He might have short time conversation appointments with people, but he's all in while he's there. He's not trying to multitask. He talks about how important getting regular sleep is. Be consistent so that you can maximize your awake minutes. Huge, huge. And then focus only on what's important. You don't have to, don't have more than 3 to 5 things that you absolutely have to get done in a day, and be great at what you try to do. And I loved that because I think sometimes, I know I'm guilty of it. My creative mind is thinking of all the things I want to accomplish, and I have to break it down in nuggets and go, okay, that's great. I want to get all these fabulous 50 things done, but what do I need to get done today? What do I need to get done this week? What do I need to get done this month? So that at some point, all 50 fabulous things get done. and I block out the time to accomplish those. And then he said it comes down to work ethic, whether you do or whether you don't, you have to adopt and adapt. And I just really appreciated that this guy it does exactly what I do. And I don't know if he's innately organized or if he just is like that big thinker, creative person, and this is what's worked. But he's obviously been very successful at managing his time to be able to accomplish what he's accomplished and do what he does. So it was reinforcement that this concept of time blocking out your day is super important. We have a phrase in our household: what you track and measure, you improve. And that's the idea that you can't just say you're going to do it. You have to find a way to physically put it all together. And it's like a puzzle. Your day is like a puzzle. And if the pieces all come together, then your whole day is completed. And it's just super, super important that we stop and assess, and we get that done. And if we didn't, then we can improve on it the next day. So I just want to talk to complete things. I just really want to talk about how I break down my day. Okay. And that it might help. Like for me, and I'm going to walk through a typical day in my world as author / podcaster. And I am learning, by the way, as I say this, I am speaking to you being a lifelong learner. I had a time blocking schedule down when it came to real estate because I did that for 15 years and I knew how to spend my day. It started with this phrase: wake up, dress up, show up, sit at my desk. I knew what I did for the first 2 hours of every morning, and then I knew what I did for the 2 hours after that, and the 2 hours after that, and an hour after that. And I am still learning in my new world of being this person how to do that. So I have things like I need to spend time each day on social media. And if you are watching this, hopefully you found it because I started to do a better job at it. I don't like it and I'm getting better at it. But the only way I get that done is that I put it in my time. And I am revisiting my time. My time my time blocking got a little skewed in the last couple of months because we are selling our home and we are making changes. And so my time got distracted a little bit. But when I come back down to being organized, I know that falls in the things that I don't like to do, to be honest with you. Some people love it. I do not. So I have to schedule the time and I have to do it. I need to work on media stuff, promoting myself outside of social media, getting to speak, having speaking opportunities. And I write articles for different magazines. So I have to block out time each day that I'm working on that. I am in the process of writing coursework right now that will be launched in June. And it takes time. I have to work on it every day and I have to allot time to work on that. But that's different than promoting my social media or writing an article for a periodical or applying to speak at so each one of these things requires a different set of focus and energy. I need to work on my podcast, or if it's not a podcast recording day or writing day, I need to work on my writing in general because I have my book, Living by the Mantras, but being a writer, I have other projects that I have ahead of me and I can't accomplish those projects if I don't block out some time to work on them. So some days during the week, I have this section called Podcast or Write. I have another time in the day that I give myself for social media, but this is what's super important too. You got to have life and you got to have fun. So what I also have broken into my day is 30-minute breaks to take a walk. I have a swimming pool. I live in California. Most of the year I can jump in it for 30 minutes and I love to get in the water and swim. I have exercise time down, whatever it is. I have to take a break. I have to get out of a chair. I have to move my body so I can stay healthy. I need to eat. Hello, we all need to eat. So I have a chunk of the day where I do just stop and eat and give myself a break from work and find other things to do. I have errands to run. I have phone calls to make. And those have nothing that might have yesterday as I'm working on all these things I need to do that have to do with this world I live in, I have a grand piano. And as I move, I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do with that grand piano. So I called a music store today. I'm thinking of putting it on consignment. that took some of the time of my day. I had to make those kinds of phone calls. I had to check in with one of my daughters. I had to take care of ordering something. So I have to allot a time that I call errands and phone calls. And I give myself 1 to 2 hours a day in my time block that I just can do that. On some days, you might not have as many errands, so you choose to, I'm going to write a little bit more, or I'm going to work on another article, or I'm just going to take a break because I've got all the other things done and I'm going to play a round of Angry Birds. It's my time. I've got that hour. And if all my other things are accomplished that are on my list of things to do, then that's my time. I have an email, half an hour. I put that down because I don't like to be distracted by email. So I finish my workday every day by checking through my email, seeing what I've missed, communicating with people. Unless I know there's something urgent to be watching for, people have to wait and they'll hear from me sometime today. And then the last part is I have what I call my evening routine. That's family time. That's hanging out with my husband. That's, going out with friends. That's, whatever floats my boat, or have an opportunity at any given time, go to a dinner party, do whatever. I have an evening time set aside where that's just my time. And that's the important thing here. And then I have a bedtime. Okay, I'm a girl that goes to bed by 10 because I get up by 5. Here's the deal. You've got to schedule in the family time. You've got to schedule in the fun time. You've got to schedule in the exercise. If you don't, you won't do it. Okay? And if you don't so time blocking isn't just about work. Time blocking is about balancing your life out so that you can go to bed at night and know that your day was well spent, and that block of 24 hours didn't just escape you, but you made something great out of it. And that's super important. And I talked in the last episode about mind dump, which is a great way to end your day. Okay, dump your brain out. Go back and listen to that one so that you're ready to start your next day and fill all the proper things into it. So here's my challenge to wrap this episode up. Break your day into chunks or blocks. Time chunking sounds a little uglier, so we'll call it time blocking. But break it up. Figure out what parts of your day are for what. And then once you do, dedicate activities to those blocks. So it's a 3-part. Take a look at your day. Create in a document like Word or Docs. Just take the day and break it into from when you wake up to when you go to bed. Put hours next to them, and then decide what would be the best use of those hours. When you're at work, what would be the best use of those hours? When you're at home, when you're with your kids, where can you squeeze in that exercise? Where can you squeeze in that reading time? I'm a reader. So part of my morning block and why I wake up so stinking early is so that I could have the choice to have my coffee and sit and read for an hour if that's how I want to spend my time. So it's really important. Otherwise, I'll be super busy and I won't read. And then I'll be bummed because I have a stack of books I haven't gotten to. So break down your day into chunks, dedicate time to those, and then put the most difficult and challenging activities into your most productive time of day. Now, what I've learned is I'm far more productive in the morning than I am in the afternoon. I also discover I get a second wind, and after about 5 o'clock, I can get super productive again. So depending on my day or week, sometimes I will take a look at the day and I'll go, I'm going to have to spend some evenings working a little bit because I know that how my week goes, after 5 o'clock, I'm going to get a whole lot more done. And those are the 3 things. So break your day into chunks, okay? Fill those chunks in with things you need to accomplish and look at when you're the best. If you're like on fire in the afternoons, then put the hardest, most challenging, or what requires the most focus from you at that time. If it's the morning, put it at that time. Take a look at yourself. Spend a week evaluating and figure out when are you your best and put the most challenging or the most attention-needy activities during those times. And then forgive yourself when you blow it. I'm going to throw that at you right now. For me, for example, I'm not gonna lie. Today, I'm going straight from this to getting my hair done. It's been on my calendar. I go every 6 weeks. That's going to screw with my time blocking, my standard time blocking. I don't have get your hair done down for every day. So what I'm going to do is take another piece of my day, shift it around a little bit, and know that there may be, because I lost some time on writing or something else I needed to get done, another time this week that I'm going to have to stop and add it in somewhere else. Maybe I don't get to have as much reading time in the evening, or watch a movie with Brian and he can choose some shoot 'em up I don't want to watch and have that time, and I work to make up. So it's just having a little flexibility and understanding that as a rule, that elusive time, that plan B is just a distraction, that need to focus is best when we put it together in a way that's effective. So hopefully, if you are a person that struggles with time management, this will help you. If you struggle with focus, this will help you. If you're a person who doesn't, hopefully you've picked up a nugget or two. There's always something you're like, oh, we're going to have to tell people to leave me alone. You know, that's a great one. My husband will do, there's this little latch that I can pop off this barn style door that he has. And when he walks in his office and puts that latch on, it's a sign to me that if I walk in that room, I'm not to bother him. If I need to go get something off the printer, because that's where our printer is, or I need to get something out of the office supply drawer, I definitely do it without irritating him or bothering him or interrupting him, because that latch is the sign that says leave me alone. And he's learned to do that to send the signal. So maybe if you're a really organized person, you've picked up a new nugget. Whatever it is, I hope that this has been worthy for you. If you want to learn more, my book, Living by the Mantras, is available wherever you can buy books. You can go to livingbythemantras.com and you can download information. Social media should be getting better and better, because that is now back on my schedule and I am focused on it. If you've enjoyed this, please download it. Please share it with somebody who might benefit from this. Please make sure that you leave comments so that I can hear what you have to say, because I am getting better at taking a look at those and interacting. And I hope that we will see you in our last episode on Plan B is Just a Distraction. It's going to be called the Buddy System, and we're going to talk about accountability. And I hope to see you then. Have a great day.